In South Africa, there are three marital regimes. You have marriages in community of property, you have marriages out of community of property, excluding the accrual system, and I will explain what that is shortly. And you have marriages with an antenuptial contract. Again, it's an out of community of property marriage, but with an accrual system. What a marriage in community of property is, it's a marriage where both parties come into a marriage and they basically become liable for each other's. It becomes a joint estate upon marriage, and that means whatever assets or liabilities either of the spouse had before marriage, it gets lump summed into a marriage, into the marriage in community of property. And whatever the parties acquire for the duration of their marriage in community of property, both have an equitable share in it, so to speak. So that is the first regime. It is the most cost effective, it is the most common, and it is the cheapest regime. The second type of marital regime we have in South Africa are marriages in community of property with accrual. We'll speak to with accrual. What does this entail? Parties need to conclude an antenuptial contract before they actually get married. This can be done as close as to 1 or 2 days, for instance, before they marry. But it has to be concluded before the marriage. And secondly, it must be registered within 3 months of it being concluded with the deeds office. Usually an attorney who's a notary would complete an ANC with the parties. They all would sign, and it needs to be registered within 3 months. But as I'm saying, the contract itself can be concluded within up to a day or two before the marriage itself. What does this type of marital regime entail? So basically, parties would regulate their proprietary aspects. They would regulate their values in terms of assets and things like that in the contract. And they will also stipulate what is the value that they're coming into the marriage. And this is very important for purposes of determining how the parties' estates have accrued with the accrual, and how the party, in the event there is a divorce, what are the values of the parties' estates. And so what a marriage out of community of property with the accrual entails, it basically means that parties, so all the debts, all the liabilities, pretty much all the liabilities that they had before their marriage stays their own. But there's also, even after they marry, each party still retains that independence. They are able to contract independently. If one of the spouses becomes insolvent, for instance, it does not affect the other spouse. Each of them have the ability to contract, and meaning even if they incur debts, they are liable for their own debts. But the advantage to a marriage of this, accrual as an accumulation, is that they do share somewhat similarly to a marriage in community or property, and as far as the growth of their respective estates is concerned. So that is one of the advantages of a marriage in community or out of community or property with the accrual. Then you have your marriage out of community or property, excluding the accrual, which basically means excluding community of property, excluding profit and losses, which means each party's assets and liabilities will basically stay theirs before the marriage. It stays there after the marriage. They are no proprietary consequences. That's the effect of the marriage system. It doesn't always play out like that in court, but perhaps when I speak to advantages and disadvantages, I will make mention. But that is in essence, what is yours is yours. Debts, assets, liabilities remains yours. Even if you become insolvent, it does not affect my estate, and vice versa. So that in a nutshell, or in summary, is our three marital regimes and what it entails. I must also say that customary marriages have the effect. Customary marriages are regulated by the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, and they have the force and effect of a community of property marriage.
They don't have choice.
Yes, unless they concluded an ANC before they conclude their customary marriages and all the precepts of a customary marriage, it is akin to a marriage in community of property.
The women are very concerned with in community of property when the husband doesn't share the contracts and share the financial obligations, that they're going to be abandoned one day with so much debt that they can't afford. So the wife is still sitting with kids with high school, they need to go to university, and thinking that her husband's got everything in order. He is more in debt than he actually has liquid capital.